Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me once again. My name remains Jacob, and in today's video we'll be talking about file handling in Python. File handling is one of the very important aspects of programming in Python because it allows us to write to file, read file. So whether we are dealing with users information, whether we are dealing with logging event, error handling and all, it is important to understand how file work in Python. So in this video I will be showing you how to handle file in Python. Now let's dive in. Now before we dive in, I want to show you some basics of file handling in Python. We need to understand the basics of file handling in Python. So the first thing is I'm going to create a variable and I'll call it equal to, and then the first one I want you to understand is the open method. So the open method allows us to open a file, and this open method takes two parameters. So the first parameter is the file name. So I'll call this file students.txt. I must explain here that there are different types of files. There's a .txt file. This .txt file is a file that is readable and understood by human and computer. The .bin is a binary file that can be understood by the computer. Then we also have the .zip file and the rest of them. So the first parameter here is the file name. Now the second is the mode. So here we can have R, which is for the read mode, we can have W, which is for the write mode, and then we can have A, which is for the append mode. So these are the different modes that we can use with our file, but in this case we're going to use R. Now, so I've explained about open file. So the next one I will explain is the .read method. Now we have a file, we have a variable that is opening, that is going to be holding the file we are creating and the mode of that file. The next one is the read method. So I'll give a variable and I'll say equal to. So I'll call our file variable and then I'll call the .read method. So if I call the .read method and then like this, okay, and then I can now print, okay, I can now print our content variable. So in this case we now have a file and there's one we can read from it. So this is how the .read method works. This is how the .open function works. This is how the .read method works. And the next one is the .close method. So once we have a file like this and we open and we're doing operations, at the end of the day we will need to close that file. So how do we close it? So we call the file name for the .close method like this, and this is how this works. Now you have understand the basis. Let's move further. Now the next one we're going to talk about is the .write method. So the .write method allows us to write to a file. So how do we do that? So we can come here. I'm going to still use the file variable. So I'll create a file and then I'll say equal to, then remember our open method or function. So I'll do something like this, and then I'll still call it student. I'll call the name of the file student, then let me have a double quote, and then I'll call it student.txt, okay, then comma, then I'll have the mode. So in this case I'm going to have a writing mode, so I'll do writing mode. All right, remember that whether you do single quote or double quote here, it doesn't matter. So I'll do now that I have a file name and I've opened it with a mode of writing, I can now add content. So I can say content equal to, and then I can now call the name of our file variable. I say file, okay, file, and then I can say .write. So inside the .write method here, I can now write whatever I want. So I can say, so I'll say happy to be learning file in Python. In this case we have been able to create a file. Since we are assigning to a variable, so we can still repeat that variable because Python allows us to repeat variable. So we can do something like, and then remember we can also add next line by string manipulation. We can do something like this. So with this, the next line, it doesn't pile up, so it goes to the next line. All right, like this. So if we run this, so let's run this and see. So here we say Python, we have a file that is already created, and then inside that file, and you can see that this is what we are having. So because we put next line, you can see that everything is next to each other. So this is how we can write to a file. We can also close this file that we have here by doing something like this. So we can call file and then we call the dot close method like this. So with this we close our file that we have written. All right, so this is how the dot write method works in Python. Now the next one I want to show you is the dot read method. Now the dot read method comes in different ways. So we have the dot read line. Okay, so let's see how it works. So we need, before, the first thing we will do is to change it to change the mode to read method. If not, we'll run into an error. So if we do something like this, for example, already we have a file. So if I come and I say file and I call the dot read method, okay, dot read, and then I now print, or let me assign it to a variable. So let me call it line, okay, or line 1. So I'll say line 1 equal to, if I print line 1, for example, print line 1, I'm going to run into an error. So you can see that we're going to run into an error. Why? It's not readable, because the mode of the file we are having is still on write. So but we can change the mode from write to what, to read, like this. So we can do something like this and change the W here to R here. Then we have now changed the file from writing mode to reading mode. So with that, our line of code can work. So let's run our code again, and then when we run it like this, so you can see that we now have all the text in our file. So this is how the dot read method works. First, you must change the mode or read mode before you can read from a file. This is the dot read, so it reads the entire thing from the file. The with is a keyword that is used to automatically open the file. Then we use the open method, and then we now pass in the file name. In this case, let's call it data. All right, like this, and then comma, then the mode that we want to write it. So this time around we can say write. Okay, let's call it write. Now then, as file object or file, whatever we want to call it, student file, we can call it student file. Let's call it student file. With this, we'll be able to now begin to create our operations, either to read, to write, or to close the file after everything. So we can perform the file operation with it. So we use the with keyword. The keyword allows us to open the file without necessarily following all of this repeated variable. So with this keyword, we just open the file. Okay, sorry, there has to be .txt here. All right, so with this, we'll be able to open the file and write to it and perform all operations that we want to do. Okay, and with this also, file closes automatically when we exit. So with the with block, it automatically the file closes. All right, so this is it. Now, okay, so we are going to build a simple program that collects information from users and store it, and create a file and store those information. Then do it. So we are going to create a function. So you can check the previous video in the description if you are new to function. So you have the def keyword that tell Python want to collect user info, so we call it user underscore info, our parentheses. Now the colon, we have function. So the first thing is we want to tell, so we can call the file name. So file name, so let's call it personal info, which should be equal to, we are going to prompt the user, we are going to tell user that this is what we need. Users will be able to enter the name of the file they want. So personal info equal to, so we'll now call the input method. Okay, input method. Now inside this input method, we can now ask the user, what is the name of your file? What is the name of your file? Okay, this is what we are going to tell users. So the first thing they are going to enter is the name of the file. Okay, so they will enter the name of the file, and then they will keep adding to the file every now and then. All right, so this is it. Now the next thing we are going to do is we're going to create a file. Now remember what I said last, so we're going to use the with keyword. So we say with, and then open, then a parenthesis, and inside this parenthesis we're going to have our variable here. Remember this personal info, okay, as our variable here. So we are going to pass it in here. Okay, then we say comma, we're going to append, we're going to have append method here as student information. Okay, let's just say student information, let's call it student underscore info. Okay, the next thing is we are going to loop, and the reason why we are looping is if we are telling users that, okay, enter the name of the file, so each file is specific to different thing. maybe in the aspect of students who are in junior level, students who are in the middle class, or students who are in their final year, depending on the situation. So we are going to use the while loop. So while it is true, okay, while true, we want the user to keep adding. So we want to use user underscore input, so call it user input, which should be equal to, so this time we are now telling the user that we should enter the student data, and once they are done, they should be able to enter quit to exit the program. Okay, so this is how it's going to be. And then we're now going to use the if statement to check that what the user is putting is not quit. If it is not quit, if the input is not equal to quit, then the program continue to run until the program say quit. The program will not stop. So let's say if, then we now say user input then equal to quit, and then we break. If you want to understand if statements and while loop, check my previous video. I explained everything you should know. We can now come back to, okay, we can now call our student info and call the .write method, and then can now impute user input. Remember what we said the other time, we are using the append method. So we are collecting the user input, then everything that is coming, they should go into the next line. So we are using the next line. We are now going to print the user input. You can now tell the user that whatever they have used at the end of the day, when the programs end, want to tell user that whatever they have been put in has already been saved. Print your data has been saved. Your data has been saved. Because we are running it as a script, we need a block that ensures that the code run only when executed as a script. Okay, so we're going to, and then when it runs, it's going to call the user input function to start the process. So we can do something like this: if underscore name equal main, and then we have a colon, and then so is it user input? What's the name of our function? User input. All right, so like this. So let's run it and see what we have. So here to Python, so it's now asking us what's the name of the file. So we say gss2 score. Let's call it gs2 scores. Okay, gs2, let's put underscore gs2 scores, then enter student data. So we say name, Abigail Jones. We can call score Abigail Jones 2020, and the next person is James Hamper. So say name, and then in front of it we can have, all right, then we can have 45. Then we can add another student again, Frederick. Let's say name, then we say Frederick, then we can also say 45. So let's stop here. So now we can enter the quit keyword to end the program. So when we do something like this, quit, and we hit enter, you can see that it's telling us that our data has been saved. Okay, so when we now open our file, we go to this, so you can see it here. Okay, and when we open, so you can see that this is the data that we entered. So this is how Python works. Okay, so this is how file input and output works in Python. So with this, you'll be able to create a program that is able to collect input from users, store it in, and it is well arranged. Okay, so the last thing I will show you here is how to add exception handling. So we can add a try and catch error, so that whenever there is an error in the file, it caches that error for us and print it to the console. So we can add a block inside our file. So how do we do it? Let's highlight this. Okay, we have highlight this thing and push it like this. So we can now come here and add our file. So I'll add a try keyword here. Okay, and then when I come here, okay, so inside this try block, so we now have our try keyword here. So here I can now add exception here, okay, and then I can say file not found error. So there are, okay, we can also customize our own error, but I will do that when we are when I'm going to explain the exception handling. So I'll now add a colon, and then I can now print that file does not exist. So here do something like this, file does not exist. So this is how to wrap your try and except error inside your file. That means that if this file does not exist, it throws an error that the file does not exist. This is how file handling operation works in Python. So to read a file, you use the .read mode, which is R, text file and all. If you have any question, you have comment, don't forget to put down under the comment below. This video gives, if you understand and you learn something from this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and then I will see you again. For now, bye bye.